The transport shuttle hummed through space as it approached the massive station orbiting Mars. Commander Jake Morrison sat in the pilot seat, watching the enormous structure grow larger through the viewport. The station looked like a giant wheel spinning slowly against the red planet below. Lights flickered along its outer rim, where ships from dozens of different worlds had docked. "First time seeing one of their stations up close," said Lieutenant Danny Brooks from the seat behind him. The Navy SEAL kept his voice calm, but Morrison could hear the tension underneath. They all felt it. "Makes our biggest ships look like toys," added Captain Lisa Martinez from across the aisle. The Marine officer checked her sidearm for the third time in the past hour, even though they all knew weapons would be useless if things went wrong. Morrison guided the shuttle toward their assigned docking bay. 3 months ago, humanity had achieved faster than light travel. 3 weeks ago, the Galactic Federation had made first contact. Now they were about to meet face-to-face with beings from across the galaxy. The docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk that vibrated through the hull. Morrison powered down the engines and turned to face his team. Besides Brooks and Martinez, he had brought Staff Sergeant Kevin Wright and Corporal Amy Chen. All of them were hand-picked military personnel, the best Earth had to offer. "Remember the briefing," Morrison said. "We are here to represent all of humanity. These aliens have been watching us for years. They think we are primitive. Our job is to prove we belong in their federation." "What if they decide we don't belong?" asked Wright, adjusting his dress uniform. "Then we deal with that when it happens," Morrison replied. He stood up and moved toward the airlock. "But we go in there with our heads high. We are not begging for their approval." The airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Beyond lay a corridor that stretched further than any building on Earth. The walls were made of some kind of smooth metal that seemed to glow with its own light. Strange symbols ran along the edges where humans might put signs or directions. A delegation was waiting for them. Morrison had seen pictures during the briefings, but seeing them in person was different. The closest one stood nearly 7 feet tall with blue-gray skin and large dark eyes. Its limbs were longer and thinner than human proportions, giving it an unsettling appearance. "Welcome to Station Kepler 7, the alien said in perfectly clear English. Its voice had an odd musical quality that made Morrison's teeth ache. "I am Ambassador Veloth of the Centauri Collective. We are pleased to finally meet representatives of Earth." Morrison stepped forward and extended his hand. "Commander Jake Morrison, United Earth Military. We appreciate the invitation." The alien looked at his outstretched hand for a moment before, carefully reaching out with its own. The skin felt cool and dry like touching leather. "An interesting custom. We have studied your species extensively, Commander Morrison. Your rapid technological advancement has been most remarkable." "We tend to learn fast when we need to," Morrison said. Veloth made a sound that might have been laughter. "Indeed. Please, follow me. The Federation Council is eager to meet you." They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Other aliens moved past them, some floating rather than walking, others with too many legs or arms to count quickly. A few stopped to stare at the humans, but most ignored them completely. "Your station is impressive," Martinez said to Veloth. "This is actually one of our smaller diplomatic facilities," the alien replied. "We thought it appropriate for first contact with a developing species." Brooks glanced at Morrison. They had all caught the subtle insult. Developing species, as if humanity were children learning to walk. The corridor opened into a vast chamber with a domed ceiling that showed the stars beyond. In the center stood a group of beings that made the humans stop and stare. The tallest creature stood at least 8 feet high with 4 arms, and what looked like natural armor covering most of its body. Its head was elongated with sharp ridges above small dark eyes. "Commander Morrison," Veloth said, "allow me to present Zekthar of the Hegemony military caste. He has traveled far to observe your species firsthand." Zekthar stepped forward with movements that were both graceful and threatening. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough, like grinding stone. "So these are the famous humans. Smaller than I expected." Morrison kept his expression neutral. We find that size isn't always the most important factor in getting things done. How fascinating, Zekthar said. He walked slowly around the group of humans, studying them like specimens in a laboratory. Your military sent these 5 to represent your entire species? These 5 represent our commitment to peaceful relations, Morrison answered carefully. Zekthar stopped in front of Brooks. The alien warrior towered over the seal, his forearms crossed in what was clearly a dismissive gesture. And this one? What makes him special among your kind? Brooks met the alien's gaze without flinching. I do my job, sir. Your job, Zekthar repeated. He turned to address the other aliens in the chamber. Their military structure fascinates me. On my world, warriors are born, not made. We have natural weapons, natural armor, superior strength and speed. Yet these soft creatures believe they can stand among the Federation's defenders. Several aliens made sounds that Morrison assumed were laughter. He felt his jaw clench, but kept his voice level. We have found that determination and training can overcome many natural disadvantages. Training. Zekthar said the word like it tasted bad. Yes, we have studied your military history. Quite violent for such a young species. Tell me, Commander, how many of your own kind have you killed in these wars of yours? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Morrison could feel his team's tension rising, but he kept his voice steady. We prefer to focus on preventing conflicts rather than counting casualties. How diplomatic, Zekthar said. But surely, your warriors have battle experience against real enemies, not just other humans playing at war? We have experience with the enemies we've faced, Brooks said quietly. Zekthar's head turned toward the seal with interest. And what enemies might those be, small human? Brooks looked up at the towering alien without backing down. Whatever. Needed fighting. The chamber fell silent. Morrison could see other aliens watching the exchange with growing interest. This was exactly the kind of confrontation he had hoped to avoid, but it seemed inevitable now. Zekthar studied Brooks for a long moment, then made another grinding sound that Morrison realized was laughter. I think I am beginning to understand your species better already. The next morning, Morrison woke to the sound of the station's artificial dawn cycle. Lights gradually brightened throughout their quarters, mimicking sunrise. He found his team already awake in the common area, drinking coffee from their own supplies. The alien food dispensers provided nutrition, but nothing that tasted like home. Sleep well? Martinez asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer. Like a baby, Morrison lied. He had spent most of the night thinking about Zekthar's barely concealed hostility. The alien warrior was clearly testing them, looking for weakness. Wright looked up from his tablet. I've been reviewing the station schematics they gave us. This place has training facilities that could house a small city. Why does that matter? Shen asked. Because Veloth sent a message an hour ago, Brooks said from the corner where he was doing push-ups. They want to show us their military capabilities today. Some kind of demonstration. Morrison felt his stomach tighten. What kind of demonstration? The message was vague, Wright said. Something about establishing proper military protocols between our species. Martinez snorted. Sounds like they want to show off. Or they want to see what we can do, Brooks said, finishing his set and standing up. Either way, we should be ready. An hour later, Veloth arrived to escort them to the training facility. The alien seemed more animated than before, his large eyes bright with what Morrison hoped was excitement, rather than anticipation of their humiliation. Your species will find today most educational, Veloth said as they walked through the corridors. The hegemony has agreed to demonstrate some basic combat techniques. Perhaps your military personnel would like to observe. We would be honored, Morrison replied, though he felt anything but honored. The training facility was enormous, with ceilings that disappeared into darkness above. Multiple levels of observation decks surrounded a central arena that was larger than most football stadiums. Aliens from different species filled the viewing areas, all of them focused on the humans with obvious curiosity. Zekthar waited in the center of the arena, but he was not alone. 3 other hegemony warriors stood with him, each as tall and intimidating as their leader. Their natural armor gleamed under the bright lights, and their forearms moved in perfect coordination as they performed what looked like warm-up exercises. "Impressive, are they not?" Veloth said. "The hegemony military caste has conquered 12 star systems. Their warriors are considered the finest fighters in the galaxy." "They certainly look formidable," Morrison said carefully. Zekthar's voice boomed across the arena. "Humans, come down and witness true martial prowess. Perhaps you will learn something useful." Morrison led his team down to the arena floor. The space felt even larger from ground level, and the watching aliens seemed to loom over them from the observation decks. He could hear the buzz of alien voices probably discussing the humans like zoo animals. "We will begin with basic strength demonstrations," Zekthar announced. One of his warriors approached a device that looked like a combination of weights and electronic sensors. The alien grasped the handles with 2 of his arms and lifted. The display showed numbers in alien script, but the watching crowd made impressed. "Sounds 8,000 pounds, Veloth translated helpfully. "Quite impressive for a basic warrior, do you not think?" Wright stepped forward. "Mind if I try?" Zekthar made his grinding laugh. "By all means, small human." Wright approached the device and studied it for a moment. He was a big man by human standards, but he looked like a child next to the alien warriors. He grasped the handles and lifted with obvious effort. The display showed much smaller numbers, and some of the watching aliens made sounds that were clearly laughter. 1,200 pounds, Veloth announced. "Not bad for such a small creature." "Now speed and agility," Zekthar said. The arena floor shifted, forming an obstacle course with barriers, climbing walls, and narrow beams. Another hegemony warrior moved through the course like flowing water, his forearms working independently to overcome each obstacle. The display showed his time in glowing numbers. "Who among you will attempt this?" Zekthar asked. Chen stepped forward before Morrison could stop her. The Marine corporal was fast and athletic, but the course was designed for beings with 4 arms and natural climbing abilities. She gave it her best effort, but finished with a time that was clearly much slower than the aliens. "Fascinating," Zekthar said. "Your species relies entirely on tools and technology to overcome your physical limitations. Without your machines, you are quite helpless." Morrison felt his temper rising, but he kept his voice level. "We have found that intelligence and adaptability can be valuable assets." "Indeed," Zekthar said. "But what happens when intelligence fails? When adaptability is not enough?" He gestured to his warriors. "In the end, superior strength and natural weapons decide the outcome of any conflict." The alien warrior began pacing in front of the humans like a predator circling prey. "Your species interests me greatly. You have achieved space travel despite your obvious physical weaknesses. You have built weapons to compensate for your lack of natural ones. But tell me, humans, what happens when you face an enemy who is stronger, faster, and better armed than you?" "We figure it out," Brooks said quietly. Zekthar stopped pacing and focused on the seal. "You figure it out? How wonderfully optimistic. But optimism does not stop claws or deflect energy weapons." "Neither does arrogance," Brooks replied. The arena fell silent. Morrison could feel the tension ratchet up several notches. Every alien in the facility was now focused on the confrontation between the towering warrior and the compact human soldier. Zekthar's head tilted slightly, studying Brooks with new interest. "Arrogance? You think I am arrogant, little human? I think you are used to being the biggest thing in the room," Brooks said. "That can make anyone overconfident." Several aliens made sharp sounds that Morrison recognized as expressions of shock. Apparently, no one spoke to hegemony warriors that way. Zekthar stepped closer to Brooks until he was looming directly over him. "You have courage. I will grant you that. But courage without ability is merely foolishness." Brooks looked up at the alien without flinching. "And ability without respect is just bullying." The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Morrison could see other aliens leaning forward in the observation decks, sensing that something significant was happening. Veloth's large eyes had gone even wider, and he was making small, distressed sounds. Zekathar's 4 arms slowly crossed over his chest. Bullying. An interesting word choice. He turned to address the watching crowd. This human believes that demonstrating superior capability is bullying. How fascinating. He turned back to Brooks. Perhaps you would like to demonstrate your own capabilities, small warrior? Show us what makes humans so special that they deserve membership in the Federation? Morrison started to step forward, but Brooks held up a hand to stop him. What did you have in mind? Zekthar's grinding laugh filled the arena. Simple combat demonstration. No weapons, no technology, just natural ability against natural ability. Unless, of course, you are afraid. The challenge was unmistakable now. Every being in the facility could see what was happening. The human, military officer was being publicly challenged by the galaxy's most feared warrior species. Brooks looked around the arena, taking in the hundreds of watching aliens, then back at Zekthar. When do we start? The arena floor cleared automatically, leaving just Brooks and Zekthar in the center of the massive space. Morrison wanted to call this off, but he knew it was too late. Every alien in the facility was watching now, and backing down would brand humanity as cowards throughout the galaxy. The rules are simple, Zekthar announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the arena. No weapons, no armor, no technology. Pure combat skill against combat skill. He gestured with all 4 arms. The match ends when one fighter cannot continue. Veloth stepped forward, his translator device glowing. Perhaps we should establish some safety protocols. No protocols needed. Zekthar cut him off. The small human wanted to test himself against superior beings. Now he will learn the natural order of things. Brooks began removing his dress uniform jacket, revealing the simple t-shirt underneath. He looked small and fragile compared to the towering alien warrior. Any other rules I should know about? Zekthar laughed, the sound echoing off the arena walls. Try not to die too quickly, little human. The audience expects entertainment. The watching aliens made various sounds of amusement. Morrison could see some of them placing what looked like bets on how long Brooks would last. None of them seemed to think he had any chance at all. Whenever you are ready, Brooks said simply. Zekthar began circling him slowly, all 4 arms, moving in different patterns. The aliens' movements were hypnotic, designed to confuse and intimidate opponents. Tell me, human, what is the longest you have ever lasted in combat? Long enough, Brooks replied, turning to keep the alien in sight. I have fought for over 30 years, Zekthar continued. I have killed warriors from 15 different species. Some were larger than me, some faster, some more cunning. All are dead now. Brooks said nothing, just kept moving in a small circle, his eyes never leaving Zekthar's center mass. You are not even trying to attack, Zekthar observed. Are you waiting for me to make the first move? How polite of you. The alien warrior suddenly lunged forward, moving faster than anything that large should be able to move. His upper arms swept down while his lower arms came up, creating a cage of limbs designed to trap and crush his opponent. Brooks wasn't there when the arms closed. He had shifted slightly to one side, just enough to avoid the crushing embrace. Zekthar's momentum carried him past the human, and he had to use all 4 arms to stop himself from crashing into the arena wall. Interesting, Zekthar said, turning around. You are faster than you look. You are slower than you think, Brooks replied. The alien's head tilted in what might have been surprise or amusement. Now you have made me curious, little human. Let us see how long that speed lasts. This time Zekthar approached more carefully, using his reach advantage to jab at Brooks with different combinations of his 4 arms. Each strike was powerful enough to break bones, but none of them connected. Brooks moved just enough to avoid each attack, never wasting energy on unnecessary movement. The watching aliens began to murmur among themselves. This was not what they had expected to see. The human should have been crushed in the first exchange, but instead he was making one of the galaxy's greatest warriors look clumsy. Stop running and fight me, Zekthar snarled, increasing the speed and power of his attacks. Brooks ducked under a massive swing and stepped back. I am fighting you. You are avoiding me, Zekthar corrected. There is a difference. Is there? Brooks asked. The question seemed to enrage the alien warrior. He abandoned his careful approach and launched into a furious assault, all four arms working in perfect coordination to overwhelm his opponent. The strikes came so fast they were almost invisible, each one carrying enough force to shatter stone. Brooks moved through the storm of attacks like water flowing around rocks. He bent and twisted and shifted, never quite where Zekthar expected him to be. Occasionally he would tap one of the alien's arms as it passed, not hard enough to damage, but just enough to show that he could have struck if he wanted to. The arena fell completely silent except for the sound of Zekthar's increasingly desperate attacks. The alien warrior was breathing hard now, his natural armor slick with perspiration. Brooks looked like he was taking a casual walk. How? Zekthar gasped, pausing his assault. How are you doing this? Doing what? Brooks asked innocently. You should be dead by now, Zekthar said. I have landed dozens of killing blows. No, Brooks corrected gently. You have thrown dozens of killing blows. You have not landed any. The distinction was not lost on the watching aliens. Morrison could see them leaning forward in their seats, their attention completely focused on the impossible scene playing out below. Zekthar's breathing was becoming labored. Fighting at maximum intensity for this long was taking its toll, even on his enhanced physiology. You cannot keep this up forever, human. Eventually you will tire, and then I will crush you. Maybe, Brooks agreed. But you will tire first. The alien warrior looked down at his own body, suddenly realizing that his opponent was right. He was already showing signs of exhaustion while the human looked like he could continue for hours. This is impossible, Zekthar muttered. You are smaller, weaker, slower. You should not be able to do this. Should not, Brooks repeated. That is an interesting phrase. Who decided what I should or should not be able to do? Zekthar's forearms dropped to his sides. You are mocking me. No, Brooks said seriously. I am trying to understand you. You seem to think that being bigger and stronger automatically makes you a better fighter. It does, Zekthar insisted. Then why have you not hit me yet? Brooks asked. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Every alien in the facility was waiting for Zekthar's answer, but the warrior had none to give. Instead, he raised all four arms above his head and brought them down in a crushing blow that would have flattened anything underneath. Brooks stepped aside at the last possible moment, and Zekthar's fists struck the arena floor with enough force to crack the metal. The alien warrior was now breathing so hard he could barely speak. Sweat poured from his body, and his natural armor was actually steaming in the cool air of the arena. Enough games, Zekthar gasped. Time to end this. He lunged forward one final time, putting everything he had left into a massive haymaker punch aimed at Brooks' head. The human ducked under the swing and stepped close to the alien's body, well inside his reach. For the first time in the entire fight, Brooks looked directly into Zekthar's eyes. What the alien saw there made him freeze in place. My turn, Brooks said quietly. But instead of attacking, Brooks stepped back and raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. I think we have both learned what we needed to learn. Zekthar stared at him in confusion. You are not going to finish this? It is finished, Brooks said. Unless you want to continue? The alien warrior looked around the silent arena, suddenly, aware that every being in the facility had watched him fail to land a single blow on a creature half his size. His natural armor was cracked from his own wild attacks. His breathing was ragged, and his forearms were shaking with exhaustion. The human, meanwhile, looked like he could fight for another hour. I do not understand, Zekthar said finally. Brooks smiled for the first time since the fight began. That is exactly the problem. The alien warrior's confusion was visible on his alien features. He had just experienced something that challenged everything he believed about combat, strength, and superiority. The small human had made him look like an amateur in front of the entire galaxy. And then, just when victory was within reach, the human had shown mercy. Why? Zekthar asked. Because, Brooks said. Someone needs to teach you the difference between fighting and killing. The words hit Zekthar like a physical blow. He staggered backward, his forearms hanging useless at his sides. Morrison could see the exact moment when the alien warrior realized that Brooks had never been in any real danger. The human could have ended the fight at any time, but had chosen to make his point in a different way. The silence in the arena was deafening. The silence stretched across the arena like a living thing. Zekthar stood breathing heavily, his forearms trembling from exhaustion. Brooks remained perfectly still, his hands at his sides, watching the alien warrior with calm eyes. Then Zekthar did something that changed everything. His breathing slowed and his posture straightened. The confusion on his face was replaced by something darker. His small eyes narrowed as he looked at Brooks, and Morrison could see the exact moment when embarrassment turned to rage. "You think you have won something here, little human." Zekthar's voice was low and dangerous. "You think your clever footwork makes you superior?" Brooks said nothing, but Morrison could see his teammate's body language shift slightly. The SEAL's relaxed stance became more alert, though he still appeared casual to anyone who did not know what to look for. "Answer me when I speak to you," Zekthar snarled. "The demonstration is over," Brooks said calmly. "You agreed the match would end when one fighter could not continue. You can barely stand." Zekthar's grinding laugh filled the arena, but there was no humor in it now. "Cannot continue? You mistake exhaustion for defeat, human. I have been playing with you." The alien warrior began walking in a slow circle around Brooks, his movements more controlled now that he had caught his breath. "Do you know what your problem is? You think showing mercy makes you strong. In the real galaxy, mercy is weakness." "If you say so," Brooks replied. "I do say so," Zekthar continued. "And now, I will prove it to you." Morrison felt ice form in his stomach. Something in the alien's tone had changed, become more focused and deadly. This was no longer a demonstration or a test of skill. This had become something else entirely. "You embarrassed me in front of my peers," Zekthar said, still circling. "You made me look foolish. Do you understand what that means in hegemony culture?" Brooks turned to keep the alien in sight, but his voice remained steady. "I imagine it means you're having a bad day." Several aliens in the observation decks made shocked sounds at the casual dismissal. Morrison could see Veloth making frantic gestures, probably trying to signal for security or medical teams. Zekthar stopped moving and faced Brooks directly. "In my culture, it means I must restore my honor, and the only way to restore honor after such humiliation is through blood." The temperature in the arena seemed to drop several degrees. Morrison could feel his team tensing behind him, but there was nothing they could do. They were too far away, and any interference would only make things worse. "The demonstration is over," Brooks repeated, but his voice carried a new edge. "No," Zekthar said quietly. "Now the real fight begins." Without warning, the alien warrior's demeanor changed completely. Gone was the exhausted, clumsy fighter from Bike moments before. This was something else entirely, something that had been hiding beneath the surface. Zekthar moved with deadly precision, all four arms working in perfect coordination. But instead of trying to overwhelm Brooks with wild attacks, he used controlled strikes designed to maim and kill. His first swing came so close to Brooks's head that it ruffled his hair. Brooks stepped back, his casual attitude evaporating. "We do not need to do this." "Yes," Zekthar hissed. "We do." The alien pressed his attack, and Morrison could see immediately that this was different from before. Zekthar had been holding back during the demonstration, probably to make the eventual humiliation more complete. Now he was fighting to kill. Brooks avoided the first few strikes, but they were coming faster and more accurately than before. The alien was no longer wasting energy on flashy movements. Every attack was calculated to end the fight permanently. "You cannot run forever, human," Zekthar said as he continued his assault. "Eventually you will make a mistake, and I will be there." Brooks said nothing, focusing entirely on staying alive. The alien's renewed attacks were forcing him to work harder than before, and Morrison could see sweat beginning to form on his teammate's forehead. Then Zekthar did something unforgivable. Instead of continuing his measured assault, the alien suddenly fainted high with his upper arms and swept low with his lower ones. Brooks jumped back to avoid the sweep, but that had been the plan all along. As Brooks landed, Zekthar stepped forward and delivered a casual backhand slap across the human's face. The sound echoed through the arena like a gunshot. Brooks stumbled sideways, blood streaming from his split lip. But it was not the physical damage that mattered. It was the insult, the deliberate humiliation in front of hundreds of watching aliens. The arena fell completely silent. Morrison knew that look on Brooks's face. He had seen it exactly twice before, both times in combat zones when things had gone very, very wrong for the enemy. Zekthar was still laughing at his own cleverness when Brooks wiped the blood from his mouth and looked up at him. "You should not have done that," Brooks said quietly. Something in the human's voice made Zekthar's laughter die in his throat. The alien warrior took an unconscious step backward, suddenly sensing that the dynamic had shifted again. Brooks was no longer the defensive fighter who had been content to avoid attacks and demonstrate superior technique. The casual slap had flipped a switch that had been carefully controlled for years of military training. "What is wrong, little human?" Zekthar asked, but his voice lacked the confidence it had held moments before. "Did that hurt your feelings?" Brooks did not answer. He simply began walking toward the alien warrior with steady, measured steps. Zekthar raised all four arms defensively. "Stay back. The match is not over yet." "Yes, it is," Brooks said. The human's movement was so fast that most of the watching aliens missed it entirely. One moment he was 3 feet away from Zekthar. The next he was inside the alien's guard with his hands in motion. Brooks's first strike was a palm thrust to Zekthar's throat, hitting the exact spot where the alien's natural armor had a gap. The impact made a wet, crushing sound that carried throughout the silent arena. As Zekthar's head snapped back from the throat strike, Brooks's other hand was already moving. His fingers formed a rigid blade that struck the base of the alien's skull with surgical precision, targeting the point where the spinal cord met the brain. The entire sequence took less than 2 seconds. Zekthar's forearms dropped to his sides as his nervous system shut down. His small eyes went wide with shock and confusion as he tried to understand what had just happened to him. Then his legs gave out, and the most feared warrior in the galaxy crumpled to the arena floor like a broken doll. The sound of his armored body hitting the metal deck echoed through the absolute silence that had fallen over the facility. Brooks stood over the fallen alien for a moment, his breathing steady and controlled. Then he calmly wiped the blood from his lip with the back of his hand and stepped away. Morrison could see aliens throughout the observation decks leaning forward in their seats, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Medical teams were already rushing onto the arena floor, but Morrison could tell from their body language that they were too late. Zekthar lay perfectly still, his small eyes staring at nothing. His natural armor, which had seemed so impressive minutes before, was cracked along the lines where Brooks had struck him. The galaxy's most feared warrior was dead. Brooks looked around the arena at the hundreds of shocked alien faces, then directly up at the observation deck where Morrison and his team were standing. "Sir," he said in a voice that carried clearly through the silence. "I believe the demonstration is concluded." The silence lasted exactly 15 seconds. Then chaos erupted throughout the arena. Aliens began shouting in dozens of different languages, their voices creating a wall of sound that echoed off the metal walls. Some were standing in their seats, pointing at the motionless form of Zekthar. Others were backing away from the railings as if the human below might somehow reach them. Veloth was the first to reach the arena floor, his long legs carrying him down the ramps faster than Morrison had thought possible. The alien ambassador's large eyes were wide with panic as he knelt beside Zekthar's body. "Medical teams," he shouted into his communication device. "Emergency medical teams to Arena 7 immediately." 3 different alien medical teams rushed onto the floor, carrying equipment that looked more like torture devices than healing tools. They surrounded Zekthar's body, their instruments beeping and flashing as they scanned for signs of life. Brooks stood exactly where he had been when Zekthar fell, his hands at his sides, watching the medical teams work with calm interest. Blood still trickled from his split lip, but he made no move to wipe it away. Morrison and his team reached the arena floor just as the senior medical officer stood up and spoke to Veloth in rapid alien speech. Morrison did not need a translator to understand the message. The alien's body language said everything. "He is dead," Veloth said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Zekthar of the Hegemony military caste is dead." The announcement rippled through the arena like a shockwave. Morrison could see aliens in the observation decks making frantic communications, probably spreading the news throughout the station and beyond. A new group of aliens approached from the main entrance. These were larger than the others, with darker armor and weapons clearly visible on their bodies. Morrison recognized them as Hegemony warriors, probably Zekthar's personal guard. The lead warrior, nearly as tall as Zekthar had been, stopped in front of Brooks. His voice was deep and filled with barely controlled rage. "You killed our commander." "Yes," Brooks said simply. The alien's forearms tensed and Morrison could see him preparing to attack. But before he could move, Veloth stepped between them. "Wait," the ambassador said urgently. This was a formal challenge. The human acted within accepted combat protocols. "Protocols?" the Hegemony warrior snarled. "He murdered Zekthar." "No," said a new voice from the arena entrance. "He defended himself." Everyone turned to see a group of alien officials approaching. Morrison recognized some of them from the diplomatic briefings. These were representatives from the Federation Council, the governing body that controlled interstellar relations. The lead official was a tall, thin alien with silver skin and 6 arms. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I am Council Representative Thexvar," he announced. "I witnessed the entire encounter from the observation deck. The human was attacked without provocation after the formal challenge had ended. The demonstration was over," Veloth agreed quickly. "Zekthar struck the human in an act of deliberate humiliation. The human's response was justified self-defense. The Hegemony warriors made angry sounds, but they did not move to attack." Morrison could see them calculating the political implications of starting a fight with Federation officials present. "Self-defense?" one of them asked. "Against what? A single slap?" "A slap that drew blood and was intended to humiliate," Thexvar replied. "In 17 different galactic legal codes, that constitutes assault. The human had the right to defend himself." Brooks finally spoke up. "I gave him multiple opportunities to stop. He chose to escalate." "You killed him in 2 seconds," the Hegemony warrior accused. "Yes," Brooks said again. "I could have done it in one, but I wanted to be sure." The casual admission sent another wave of shocked murmurs through the watching aliens. Morrison could see them processing what they had just heard. The human had not gotten lucky or acted in desperate panic. He had killed their greatest warrior with calm, calculated precision. Thexvar stepped closer to Brooks, studying him with obvious interest. "What is your military classification, human?" "Lieutenant, United States Navy SEALs," Brooks replied. "And among your species, this makes you elite?" Brooks shrugged. "It makes me qualified for certain jobs." "What kind of jobs?" Thexvar pressed. Morrison decided to intervene before Brooks said something that would make the situation worse. "Lieutenant Brooks is trained in special operations, unconventional warfare, direct action, counter-terrorism." "Counter-terrorism," Thexvar repeated slowly. "You fight against your own species?" "When necessary," Morrison said carefully. The alien official's 6 arms moved in what Morrison hoped was thoughtful consideration rather than preparation for attack. "And how long have humans been fighting wars?" "All of recorded history," Morrison admitted. "Against each other?" "Primarily, yes." Thexvar turned to address the assembled aliens in the arena. "Do you understand what this means? This species has spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare against opponents with identical capabilities. They have turned killing into a science." Veloth made a distressed sound. "But they seem so peaceful. Their diplomatic overtures have been entirely reasonable." "Because they choose to be peaceful," Morrison said. That does not mean we are incapable of violence when it becomes necessary. How many of you are like him? Thexvar asked, gesturing toward Brooks. Morrison considered the question carefully. In terms of specific training, the SEALs are an elite unit, perhaps 8,000 active personnel. But in terms of combat capability, every human military member receives extensive hand-to-hand combat training. And how many military members does your species maintain? Active duty across all branches? Approximately 25 million worldwide. The number hit the assembled aliens like a physical blow. Morrison could see them doing the calculations, trying to imagine 25 million beings with the same lethal capability they had just witnessed. This changes everything, one of the Federation officials muttered. Thexvar nodded slowly. Indeed it does. We assumed humans were a peaceful species because they requested membership rather than demanding it. We interpreted their small delegation as a sign of weakness rather than confidence. You thought 5 humans were all we could spare, Morrison said. We thought 5 humans were all we needed. The distinction was not lost on anyone present. The aliens had been operating under the assumption that humanity was desperately seeking their protection and approval. The reality was that Earth had sent a handful of representatives because they genuinely wanted peaceful relations, not because they lacked alternatives. Dr. Helen Parker, who had been silent throughout the encounter, finally spoke up. If I may add some biological context, Thexvar gestured for her to continue. Humans evolved as persistence predators, she explained. Our entire physiology is optimized for endurance hunting and pack coordination. We are designed to track prey over vast distances, working together to exhaust and kill animals much larger than ourselves. And then you turn these same abilities against each other, Thexvar observed. For thousands of years, Parker confirmed. War has been our primary driver of technological and tactical advancement. Every human weapon, every human strategy, every human fighting technique has been tested in combat against other humans. The alien official's 6 arms spread wide in what Morrison recognized as a gesture of amazement or fear. No wonder your lieutenant killed Zekthar so easily. He was fighting an opponent who had never faced anything like human combat doctrine. Brooks wiped the blood from his lip and looked around at the assembled aliens. Sir, if I may? Thexvar nodded. Where I come from, that was not even a real fight, Brooks said quietly. That was just me asking him to stop. The arena fell silent again as the implications of that statement sank in. The most feared warrior in the galaxy had been killed by a human who was not even trying his hardest. Morrison could see the exact moment when the galactic balance of power shifted forever. 1 month later, Commander Morrison stood in the center of the Federation Council chambers, surrounded by representatives from 200 different worlds. The enormous room buzzed with nervous energy as alien delegates whispered among themselves in dozens of languages. The video of Brooks killing Zekthar had spread across the galaxy faster than anyone thought possible. Every civilized world had seen the footage of a human warrior ending the life of the hegemony's greatest fighter in 2 precise strikes. The recording had been analyzed by military experts from every major species, and their conclusions were all the same. Humanity was dangerous. Morrison wore his dress uniform with quiet pride, flanked by Colonel Ryan Davis and Major Patricia Woods. Both officers carried themselves with the same calm confidence that had proven so unsettling to alien observers. They were not trying to intimidate anyone, but their mere presence seemed to make the alien delegates nervous. The emergency session of the Federation Council will now come to order, announced High Chancellor Morvex, an ancient being whose species had helped found the Galactic government 3,000 years ago. We are here to address the events at Station Kepler 7 and determine humanity's status within our organization. A ripple of movement went through the assembled delegates. Morrison could see fear in some of their alien faces, curiosity in others, and outright hostility from the hegemony representatives who had arrived that morning. Commander Morrison, the Chancellor continued, you may present your species' position. Morrison stepped forward to the central speaking platform. The chamber was so large that his voice would be barely audible without the translation system. but every word would be heard clearly by every delegate present. Honored representatives, Morrison began. Humanity seeks peaceful cooperation with all members of the Federation. We believe that our species can contribute valuable knowledge and resources to the galactic community. Valuable knowledge, interrupted Warlord Kethmore, the new leader of the hegemony delegation. Is that what you call the systematic study of murder? Morrison turned to face the alien warrior calmly. We call it survival, Warlord. For most of our history, humans who could not defend themselves did not live long enough to have children. And now you bring that violence to the galaxy, Kethmore accused. Your warrior killed Zekthar in cold blood. No, Morrison replied firmly. Lieutenant Brooks defended himself against an unprovoked attack. Your commander chose to escalate a peaceful demonstration into a lethal encounter. High Chancellor Morvex raised one of his many appendages for silence. The circumstances of Zekthar's death have been thoroughly investigated. The human acted within established protocols for self-defense. However, the manner of that defense has raised serious questions about human military capabilities. Morrison nodded. We are prepared to answer any questions the Council may have. Excellent, said Representative Thexvar, who had become something of an expert on human military doctrine over the past month. Commander, how many humans possess the same combat skills as Lieutenant Brooks? All active military personnel receive similar training, Morrison answered honestly. The intensity and specialization vary by role, but every human soldier is taught basic hand-to-hand combat techniques. And how many such soldiers does Earth maintain? Approximately 25 million in active service, with another 50 million in reserve status. The number sent a wave of shocked murmurs through the chamber. Several alien delegates began making rapid calculations on their personal devices. 75 million trained killers, Kethmore said accusingly. 75 million defenders, Morrison corrected. Humans do not fight for conquest or glory. We fight to protect what matters to us. And what matters to you? Asked Chancellor Morvex. Morrison considered the question carefully. Our families, our freedom, our right to exist as we choose. Noble sentiments, said Ambassador Veloth, who had been quietly supportive of humanity since the station incident. But your species' history suggests a more aggressive nature. Our history is complicated, Morrison admitted. Yes, humans have fought many wars, but we have also shown remarkable restraint when we possessed overwhelming advantages. Restraint? Kethmore laughed harshly. You speak of restraint after your warrior killed our greatest champion? Morrison's expression hardened slightly. Your champion struck an unarmed opponent in a deliberate act of humiliation. Lieutenant Brooks showed remarkable restraint by ending the encounter quickly rather than prolonging Zekthar's suffering. Suffering? Several aliens asked simultaneously. Colonel Davis stepped forward. If I may clarify, Commander? Morrison nodded, and Davis addressed the chamber. Zekthar died instantly from precise strikes to his nervous system. Lieutenant Brooks could have chosen many other options that would have caused significant pain before death. The clinical explanation seemed to disturb the alien delegates even more than the original killing. The idea that humans had developed multiple ways to kill efficiently was clearly unsettling. This is exactly what concerns us, said Representative Quandle of the Centauri Collective. Your species has turned warfare into an exact science. How can we trust you not to use this knowledge against us? Major Wood spoke for the first time. Because we are here asking for membership instead of demanding submission. The simple statement hit the chamber like a thunderbolt. Every alien delegate suddenly understood the true implications of humanity's request to join the Federation. You could have conquered us, Chancellor Morvex said slowly. Perhaps, Morrison said. But why would we want to? Conquest requires constant military occupation and creates endless resistance. Cooperation is much more efficient. Efficient, Thexvar repeated. You even approach diplomacy like a military operation. Everything humans do is influenced by our evolutionary history, Morrison explained. We are pack hunters who learned to work together to overcome superior individual opponents. Cooperation is not just our preference, it is our primary survival strategy. And if cooperation fails? Kethmore asked threateningly. Morrison looked directly at the hegemony warlord. Then we fall back on our secondary survival strategy. The threat was unmistakable, but it was delivered with such calm professionalism that it somehow seemed reasonable rather than aggressive. Chancellor Morvex consulted with several other senior delegates before addressing the chamber again. The Council has reached a preliminary decision regarding humanity's application for Federation membership. The chamber fell completely silent. Given the unique circumstances of first contact and the demonstrated capabilities of human military forces, we believe it would be unwise to treat Earth as a standard applicant world. Morrison felt his stomach tighten. This could go either way. Therefore, the Chancellor continued, we are prepared to offer humanity full Federation membership with immediate military partnership status. The announcement created an uproar among the delegates. Military partnership was usually reserved for species that had proven themselves over centuries of service to the Federation. Furthermore, Chancellor Morvex said when the noise died down, we would like to invite human military advisors to assist in developing new training protocols for Federation defense forces. Morrison exchanged glances with his officers. They had come seeking basic membership and were being offered a position of leadership. We are honored by the Council's confidence, Morrison said carefully. But we should clarify something important. Lieutenant Brooks is not representative of humanity's most elite warriors. He is simply a well-trained professional soldier. You have more capable fighters? Thexvar asked with obvious concern. We have specialists for different types of missions, Morrison explained. Lieutenant Brooks is trained for direct action and counter-terrorism. We also have personnel trained for psychological warfare, sabotage, assassination, and large-scale military operations. The alien delegates absorbed this information with visible unease. They had been terrified by what they thought was humanity's best warrior, only to learn that he was actually fairly typical. Perhaps, Chancellor Morvex said slowly, we should discuss the terms of partnership in private session. Morrison nodded. We look forward to productive negotiations. As the formal session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Kethmore approached Morrison with his honor guard flanking him. This is not over, human, the warlord said quietly. The hegemony does not forget insults. Morrison met his gaze calmly. Neither do we, warlord, neither do we. The alien warrior's expression suggested he was beginning to understand exactly what that meant. Later that evening, Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Federation Council station, looking out at the stars. Colonel Davis joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee from their own supplies. Think it will work? Davis asked. Morrison accepted the coffee gratefully. The partnership? Probably. They are more afraid of us than we are of them, which is usually a good foundation for mutual respect. And if it does not work? Morrison sipped his coffee and watched a patrol of Federation ships pass by the station. They looked impressive, but he could already see several tactical weaknesses in their formation. Then we go to Plan B, he said. Quietly, Davis nodded. They both knew what Plan B was, though neither would say it aloud.